It simply wouldn't be true to say, Nancy L.D. Cartwright, if you own a TIAA life insurance policy, you'll live longer. But it is a fact, nonetheless, that persons insured by TIAA do enjoy longer lifetimes, on average, than persons insured by commercial insurance companies that serve the general public. I will take as a starting point for the argument facts like those reported by the TIAA letter. It wouldn't be true that buying a TIAA policy would be an effective strategy for lengthening one's life. TIAA may of course be mistaken. It could after all be true. What is important is that their claim is, as they suppose, the kind of claim which is either true or false. There is a pre-utility sense of goodness of strategy and what is and what is not. A good strategy in this pre-utility sense is an objective fact. Consider a second example. Building the canal in Nicaragua, the French discovered that spraying oil on the swamps is a good strategy for stopping the spread of malaria, whereas burying contaminated blankets is useless. What they discovered was true, independent of their theories, of their desire to control malaria, or of the cost of doing so. The reason for beginning with some uncontroversial examples of effective and ineffective strategies is this. I claim causal laws cannot be done away with, for they are needed to ground the distinction between effective strategies and ineffective ones. If indeed it isn't true that buying a TIAA policy is an effective way to lengthen one's life, but stopping smoking is, the difference between the two depends on the causal laws of our universe and on nothing weaker. This will be argued in Part 2. Part 1 endorses the first of Russell's claims, that causal laws cannot be reduced to laws of association. Part 1. I will abbreviate the causal law C causes E by C if C then E. Notice that C and E are to be filled in by general terms, not names of particulars. For example, force causes motion or aspirin relieves headache. The generic law C causes E is not to be understood as a universally quantified law about particulars, even about particular causal facts. It is generically true that aspirin relieves headache, even though some particular aspirins fail to do so. I will try to explain what causal laws assert by giving an account of how causal laws relate on the one hand to statistical laws, and on the other to generic truths about strategies. The first task is not straightforward, for although causal laws are intimately connected with statistical laws, they cannot be reduced to them. A primary reason for believing that causal laws cannot be reduced to probabilistic laws is broadly inductive. No attempts so far have been successful. The most notable attempts recently are by the philosophers Patrick Suppes and Wesley Salmon, and in the social sciences by a group of sociologists and econometricians working on causal models, of whom Herbert Simon and Hubert Blalock are good examples. Blalock. It is not just that these attempts fail, however, but rather why they fail that is significant. The reason is this. As Suppes urges, a cause ought to increase the frequency of its effect. But this fact may not show up in the probabilities if other causes are at work. Background correlations between the purported cause and other causal factors make situation described where one of the two pieces is drawn at random, the total probability for a large number of clicks is half 0.9 and half 0.1, so 0.5. So the conditional probability for the Geiger counter to click when the uranium is present is less than the unconditional probability. Nevertheless, so the conditional probability for the Geiger counter to click when the uranium is present is less than the unconditional probability. Nevertheless, when the uranium has been drawn and the Geiger counter does register a large number of clicks, it is the uranium that causes them. The Geiger to click when the uranium is present is less than the unconditional. Nevertheless, when the uranium it is the uranium that causes them. The uranium decreases the probability of its effect in this case. But this is only because as Salmon constructs it, whenever the uranium is present, the even more effective polonium is absent. All the counterexamples I know to the claim that causes increase the probability of their effects work in the same way. In all cases, the cause fails to increase the probability of its effects for the same reason. In all cases, the cause fails to increase the probability of its effects for the same reason. In the situation described, the cause is correlated with some other causal factor which dominates in its effects. This suggests that the condition, as stated, is too simple. A cause must increase the probability of its effects, but only in situations where such correlations are absent. The most general solutions in which a particular factor is not correlated with any other causal factors are situations in which all other causal factors are held fixed. That is, situations which are homogeneous with respect to all other causal factors. In the population where everyone exercises, smoking cannot be correlated with exercising. So too, in populations where no one is an exerciser, I hypothesize then that the correct connection between causal laws and laws of association is this. C causes E. If and only if C increases the probability of E in every situation which is otherwise causally homogeneous with respect to E. Carnap's notion of a state description can be used to pick out the causally homogeneous situations. A complete set of causal factors for E is the set of all C such that either it's a lot of math. If CI then positive E, or if CI then negative, not E, for short, if CI then negative or positive E. Okay, I could read that, that's fine. Every possible arrangement of the factors from a set which is complete except for C picks out a population homogeneous in all causal factors but C. Each such arrangement is given one of the two end-state descriptions consisting of all alternative causal factors. These are the only situations in which probabilities tell anything about causal laws. I will refer to them as test situations. For the laws if C then E. Using this notation, the connection between laws of association and causal laws is this. Condition 4. Condition 4 is added to ensure. Condition 4 is added to ensure that the causal laws could be conjoined to a single set of probability laws. Thus, two worlds could be identical in all their laws of association,